Welcome to the Quantum Healing Oracle. In this channel, I use astrology and tarot to bring forward reflections that can help you live your most inspired and empowered life. My name's Pan. If you enjoy my content, please feel free to like and subscribe, share this video. It really helps this information get out to more people who may have use for this kind of information. So today I'm going to continue with part 2 of looking at the lunar eclipse happening March 3rd. If you want, you can go back and check out part 1. I'll put a link in the description. And in part 1, I talked a lot about my personal reflections of understanding my moon in Virgo and how that has helped me to understand how to use a value assessment in understanding what fully aligns with me and what doesn't align with me. And in today's reading, we're going to go a layer deeper into that information, and we're also going to do a tarot reading. So, as always, please only take what resonates. These are my interpretations of the energies, and nothing's ever set in stone. There are multiple paths available to you at all times, and it's up to you to choose the path that works best for you. If you'd like a personal reading from me, you'll find my email in the description box. Okay, so last night, just after the eclipse happened, I was awake in the middle of the night, and I received kind of a transmission and a way of talking about this. I want to share a little bit about that perspective. And so yesterday in my video, I talked about how that our being is a radiant being of light, and that radiance is always exuding from us, and that the lunar eclipse is designed to illuminate and highlight specific blocks in that radiance. And that's kind of looking at it through an energetic lens. And I wanted to take a step back and look at it through a lens of consciousness. And what I was shown is that anytime consciousness comes into creation or into the awareness of itself, it splits into a polarity. One polarity is what it is consciously aware of, and the other polarity is what it is unconsciously aware of. And what that means is that at any given time, there's so much information coming into our field that we only process a certain amount of it consciously, that we can say we understand and see that and experience that clearly. And there's this whole other amount of information that we can't process in the moment. And so this is the way that we talk about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Our awareness is taking in all of the information, but it's only selecting what we can consciously understand at any given time. And that's because the original polarity of creation itself, and all beings in creation, right up to the all that is split into this polarity of awareness, and it goes through a similar evolutionary process. This is one of the things that connects us through all layers of consciousness and all dimensions of existence, is we all go through our own process of self-discovery, which is to be aware of what we're aware of and then integrate what we're unaware of as we go along. The best example of this is when we're born as babies. We're born into this world, and people will often look at a baby and be like, wow, look at how perfect they are. They're just shining the light of God through their eyes. From that baby's experience, it is the example of that polarity. It is pure light and the expression of the divine, and yet it is in a world that it doesn't understand at all. So it begins from that moment to go through that journey of processing what it knows about itself, what it understands about itself, but that polarity is very great in the beginning. And then as the being matures, it incorporates the understanding of the world, and it begins to expand its understanding of who it is. And so this is the process of evolution, and this is what's happening within each of our own journey. And the reason why these two polarities work together is because you could see the conscious awareness as being the light of awareness, is what you see in the light of awareness, and the unconscious awareness is in the shadow, in the darkness of what you cannot see. And for the part of the consciousness that's in the darkness, it needs the light to see it. So it requires the light to see itself in the darkness. And the light needs to feel what's in the shadow. It needs to feel what it doesn't understand in order to understand itself. So this is the conversation that the light and the shadow, or it can even be termed as Mother, Father, God, these are the primordial forces of consciousness that are in relationship with each other always to exchange the information that they hold in order to combine and create a new being, because consciousness doesn't actually exist as a polarity, it exists as a trinity. It exists as those two polarized expressions, and then there's the center point, which is the point that any conscious being finds themselves within, so they can consider both the light and the shadow. And this is the nature of light, is to vibrate faster, to bring life, to expand. And the nature of darkness and shadow is to compress, is to slow down. And so these two forces are diametrically opposed to one another, where one wants to speed up frequency and one wants to slow down frequency. And that's why they need to constantly be in communication with one another in order to give birth to the conscious being that we see and feel as represented by the sun. You can imagine you have the mother and the father, and it gives birth to the sun. And that sun is the radiance that I was talking about in yesterday's video. That radiance that we exude from our heart, that we exude from the essence of our being, that is the metaphoric and literal connection to us actually being the sun. We are the child of these universal forces, expressing ourselves and learning about ourselves and going through the very same process, utilizing these two aspects of ourselves. Okay? And so what makes this process work is that you can only incorporate and integrate what you don't know about yourself when you're ready to. It's kind of like when you're going through childhood and you experience trauma. There's too much overwhelming information that can't be processed in that time when you're a child. And so you only process and experience what you can experience, and the rest of it you have to process later. Usually when you become an adult and you look back and you start to say, oh, there's actually so much more happening here that I didn't see that then. So what's happening in this time span between when the experience happens and when you process what's happening is that in the moment of it happening, there's so much information, it's overwhelming. That overwhelming of information creates what we call denial. Denial creates a space for that experience and information to go until we're ready to process it. And until we are ready to process it, we would say we hold it in denial. We would deny that it's true. We would deny that it exists. So denial is a space that we each have of unresolved, unprocessed experiences that are ready to integrate back into the being when the being is capable and able to do that. And this is where this process is showing its intelligence, is that the system of consciousness itself seems to know exactly what information is able to be processed from the unconscious at any given time. And this is why triggers are so important. And triggers being those strong emotional responses that we have anytime that we're thrust into a situation or a circumstance or a relationship that we really just don't enjoy what it feels like, we don't want to be there, and we don't like it at all. Everybody knows what a trigger feels like. But the trigger is so valuable because that is the signal from the universal system of intelligence to let the conscious being know, hey, it's time, you're capable now of integrating this part of yourself that you don't understand. And what's so fundamentally important about recognizing this, and I know a lot of you probably already understand this and it's redundant, but when we work with our shadow, a lot of times we're working with the reflections in our world. And so this is how the light and the conscious awareness is the light that feels like you. It feels like it's already known and encapsulated within you. And what you don't know gets reflected out. This is the same relationship we have with the sun and the moon. The sun is the known part of the self, and the moon reflects the darkness that we don't see. And so, as we all know, this time is so strong with triggers and intense experiences where are thrusting people into places of feeling that they don't enjoy being, and not everybody's equipped or understands how purposeful it is to be there. And so part of what I like to offer, because I've very much been going through this process for my entire adult life, is just a way of contextualizing and supporting anyone that is finding themselves needing to face their shadow or face these triggers or face the emotional pieces that come up. Because the inclination when the emotional pieces come up is you just want to make it stop. You just want to go back to the way it felt better. You want to find some way to either eliminate or remove that part of the self so that it doesn't impact you anymore, like separate yourself from it. There's always usually a lot of judgment and blame towards the reflection, and it basically creates a strong perspective that it's that thing in the external world that's creating this feeling I don't like. And that is the denial itself. Like the voice of the denial, the effect of the denial is the part that would convince you to say that this thing that you don't like showing up in your reality isn't you, it's separate from you, and you don't really need to deal with it at all. Because just as we have this conscious part of ourselves, the conscious part of ourselves wants to become more conscious. It's engaged in continuing to influence ourselves towards more light and life and consciousness. But the unconscious part of ourselves is doing the opposite. It's designed to hold back conscious integration. And so it's almost like the proverbial angel and devil that we have on our shoulders, where there's one part of ourselves that wants to go forward and expand and incorporate more, and there's another part of ourselves that just resists it at all costs and is convincing us to not go there, that we don't need to integrate it. And this is part of why I feel like at this time, the reflecting through the Virgo moon and the Virgo energy, as I was talking about value assessment and knowing how to choose what aligns with your values yesterday, another way of looking at Virgo is they look at it, you can look at it through the lens of purity. And I don't mean purity in the form of being, pure virgin or pure in this way. It's more the process of purification itself. That there's a self-discrimination and a discernment involved with understanding the process of purification that each of us are going through. So when you look at that through the lens of a health crisis, oftentimes you're thrust into physical functions where the body's not working correctly, and you need to look at your life choices and say, oh, I might need to change eating habits or exercise habits or certain emotional patterns or relational dynamics. There's a discrimination that goes into selecting what brings health, what brings life. And so this conscious discrimination and this way of assessing these different options and choices is very much about the Virgo energy. And this is, again, the process of purification is taking that base consciousness that is unintegrated and alchemizing it, incorporating the aspects of yourself that you didn't understand, and they turn into a new expression of self. So when these triggers come up and these projections and these ideas of judgment and blame in the reflection can all be intentionally worked to allow and incorporate the emotions that are involved and the beliefs that are involved and the ideas you're holding about yourself or the ideas that you're holding about the world and the ideas that are not fully in alignment with who you truly are. That external reflection feels intense because it's the universal intelligence letting you know it's time to integrate that. And at the same time, it can't force anyone to do that. Like there's an absolute element of free will behind this. And so when I look into the quantum field, and I see that there's a potential of ways that this unconscious information can be experienced and integrated. And that's why we get to choose our own timing, our own pace, our own style of how we do our shadow work, how we integrate the parts of ourselves that aren't comfortable and that we don't like. And this is very much highlighted at this time, and I feel like in some ways this is going to get stronger from this eclipse on, because it's just coming to be a time on the planet when self-knowledge, self-awareness, and a remembering of who we are and why we're here is stronger than it's ever been, stronger than it's been for thousands of years. And so that universal intelligence is kind of pushing the collective to dive deeper into themselves and to use all the tools that we've developed along the way in order to make space and integrate these polarities and create more light. Because just as though the father and the mother come together in a conversation to understand one another, the son is born, it creates light in the world. And so that's kind of our mission here, is to come in as babies, experience this polarity, and slowly integrate what we don't understand. And in the process, the more we understand ourselves and the more we integrate into ourselves, the more light that we can experience and embody and show up in the world. And that goes in alignment with what I was talking about in yesterday's video. So again, just another perspective on showing kind of how eclipses work and also why this process of purification and conscious integration of the self is very much about personal responsibility. It's about taking your entire reality under your own ability to respond to it. Instead of feeling like there's any piece or part that has power over you, that you can't change, that that's not you doing it, that that's someone else doing it. The world would be better off if it wasn't for him or for her. If we could just get rid of this part of humanity, then we'd be better. Like, all those ideas and beliefs are not going to yield the alchemy and yield the light. They're not going to birth the light in this world. But those perspectives and those denials will get stronger and continue to get louder and trying to convince each person who's still involved in that process that that is the truth. So again, it's just my interpretation and perspectives and kind of the transmission I received and how I could share it today. So now we're going to go and check out the tarot and see what comes up there. Okay. Ancient Muse, Soul Truths, Higher Self, Deep Inspiration. All paths lead home, inner authority, intuition, turn your gaze within. Time to breathe out, disseminating moon. Gratitude, nice sun there. And coherence. Okay, this is beautiful. This is a great overall energy here. Okay, so basically this energy is talking about what I was just talking about. This higher self soul truth is this truth of integration, of returning to wholeness, of incorporating all the different aspects of self. And yet you can choose any way in which you wish to take that path. And this is also part of the Virgo energy, is using the discernment on how fast you can integrate this information. And that's why even when triggers happen, you may not be able to integrate that energy quickly. It may need to be that you integrate what you can integrate from it, and then it kind of backs off and seems like it goes away, and then it comes up again. This is what I experienced in all my relationship dynamics with partners, is even though the partner would change, the same patterns, the same triggers, the same emotions would keep flooding back each time, because it was giving me a chance to go as deep as I could go until I couldn't take any more. And so that was also in my dream last night, as I was being shown that, you know, this conscious integration process is an expansion of light and is a raising of our frequency, but we can't do that just for the sake of having a higher frequency. We have to do that and maintain the stability of ourselves and the rest of our life along the way. And how this also goes collectively. So even though it looks like we're in a very challenging time on the world, I can feel the compassion that has gone in and the care that has gone into the idea that we can only expand and heal the collective at the pace in which the collective can maintain its coherence. Because as soon as the changes and the energy that needs to be integrated breaks up the coherence into too much fragmentation, it can destabilize the whole structure of consciousness itself, and that's counterproductive. So when I look back in my own life, I see it's been a gentle integration with some intense moments that come through, but it's been very supportive and compassionate as I've been able to integrate these elements of my unconscious awareness. And I feel that I can see that happening in the collective. So even though sometimes it seems like nothing's happening, sometimes it seems like everything's going to fall apart, that's okay. Those are perspectives that we can hold, because those are the polarities we're holding. That either everything's immediately just going to get better or everything's going to be destroyed. It's actually a combination of that in a way that can maintain the coherence as it goes forward. And so what I'm really feeling about the other part of this collective energy is to just do your best to relax into the process. I know sometimes that's easier said than done, but we've been programmed to live in a world where we feel that if we don't keep ourselves busy all the time, if we don't continually strive to achieve more and take care of everyone else and do all those normal things that we're supposed to do as people, that we're somehow going to fail or we're going to be destitute. And that keeps our nervous system running on a heightened sense of alertness. It's a vigilance that we can't relax from. And so I feel like one of the greatest pieces of advice for any time of intensity, and this is going through personal triggers or going through collective events, is to just take space and relax into it as much as possible. Just try to be present with the feelings and the emotions that come up, and make space to give all of the awareness to the process of integration when it gets intense. I had this mantra. I went through an intense integration piece the last couple weeks, and this mantra came through that was saying, I am opening in loving acceptance to receive God's will and choose. And that was my conscious way of letting myself know that I was going to not be doing anything except create an openness in a way of creating a loving space to accept what's coming up and understand that the challenges that are coming up are not only the patterns from the past and the limiting beliefs that are falling away, but they're the instructions on how to move forward to create more coherence. That's been one of the most powerful experiences of alchemy that I've had, is that what's really happening under the surface of an intense trigger is that there's a new set of instructions that are coming through on how to participate in the changes and move consciousness forward. But as long as we get stuck in the triggered place where all we can focus on is the negative emotion and we keep projecting it outward, we're not allowing ourselves to process and go deeper to allow those instructions to come forward. I've been through this enough times now to know to breathe and let that trigger come through and wait until I get the instruction and the peace that comes from within that. And when I say God's will, I don't mean this as like an external deity or force that is controlling everything. It's that voice of Mother, Father, God within me that I commune with their process of exchanging information and delivering that in the form of some kind of inspiration that I perceive as an excitement, something I can do, something I can express, something I can share. This YouTube channel is a perfect example. This was an excitement, and it was an inspiration that came forward from my own process of healing that made me feel, oh, I can actually take all these challenges that I've been going through and turn them into a service and share. And that's really what shadow work is designed to do. It's designed to put ourselves in touch with a deeper layer of ourselves to receive that higher understanding. And you can call it the will of creation or the will of Mother, Father, God, but it's really your own will. It's your own value being able to be chosen and taken action on, just like I was talking about in yesterday's video. When we understand how we can take action and choose what's in alignment with our highest values, we are in alignment with creation itself at the highest level. Our will in alignment with our deepest values is God's will. They're one and the same. But we have to interpret that for ourselves by allowing ourselves to try to express will and desire in directions that doesn't go in alignment with that. And that's usually what leads to the triggered place eventually. So coming back to relax into it as much as possible, understand that this is a deep spiritual process that we're undergoing, and it does lead home. It is leading home. And when we can feel, I love how the sun is on the gratitude card. We can feel just grateful for the light. We can feel grateful for the process of integration. We can feel grateful for the triggers that put us in touch with a deeper sense of self. That we are the vehicles of manifesting coherence on this planet. This planet will survive and humanity will evolve because we will survive and we will evolve. We will choose that consciously. And the other piece of this transmission that came in last night is it almost feels cliche to say that our very choices result in life or death, because that just seems a little exaggerated. But really underneath all of that, within each of our choices, both in the way that we perceive and in the way we take action, they either align with coherence and light and life and love, or they align with fragmentation and darkness and compression. And that's what we call death. Death is the strongest polarity of compressing something, slowing a frequency down so much that it seems like it's not vibrating at all. And there are parts of ourselves that have been compressed that far. There are parts of ourselves that have been shut down and compressed and slowed down so much so that the way they wake up, the way they are revived back into life, is through feeling those depths of those triggers that feel so uncomfortable. By allowing ourselves to feel the parts of ourselves that feel that uncomfortable and give some kind of expression to it, is breathing life back into that place that's slowed down. It starts vibrating again. It's bringing those parts of ourselves back to life. And that's really, again, under the hood of what's happening in the world and why it feels so intense, because there's so much energy vibrating the parts of ourselves that don't feel good, because we're reviving the part of the consciousness that has been slowed down to the point of death. But the way that it manifests through our everyday life is we will find inspired actions and inspired choices that bring life, or we will make choices and have actions that will perpetuate death. And there's no judgment in that. That's just the nature of this angel and devil on the shoulder. That's the nature of those polarities operating within us. But when we understand we are the vehicles of coherence, we are the ones who bring light back to the planet, we do that through our frequency and our choices. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the center of this reading, King of Swords. It's funny, I felt that energy as soon as I started shuffling this deck. And Page of Coins. Okay, so what the center of this reading is about is this is the discernment energy, but it's also in recognizing that dealing with the emotional component is a learning process. So it's like saying that I know that my decisions carry this great weight with them, that my choices have this potential to bring life or death. Like it's a conscious recognition that my discernment and my discrimination is important for my own life, my own health, and for the health and the life of this planet. And I'm taking that seriously to a degree where I'm going to focus on that. But the emotional component within it recognizes that we're still learning so much about ourselves emotionally, that it creates that compassionate buffer. It takes the pressure out of this do or die kind of feeling that a lot of people have. And so this is a great example of that polarity in action. Like, yes, we have the absolute power to make the choice to change the world. And it's okay that we can't do that all at once. Basically, that we have to give ourselves space and time to allow that process to unfold at the rate that we can integrate it, and to be gentle and easy with ourselves along the way. When I was feeling into, in that transmission last night, I was feeling into why the moon rules Cancer. Now, traditionally, they talk about the moon ruling Cancer because it's home and family and nurturing others. But when I went and layered deeper into it, what I could see is that because the nature of consciousness is relational, it's relational because we only understand ourselves when we bounce the reflection back off others. And that's why all relationships are the vehicle for our understanding of ourselves and the expression and expansion of ourselves. And so when we think about a family chooses their life experience together, whatever the roles that they play, and they're all growing. They're all growing through their own challenging process of consciousness integration. But they show up for one another in a compassionate way to offer the reflections that they need, and especially the ones that are the hardest. You know, like when I look back at my childhood and I see the hardest reflections that I had to work with and the most challenging emotions, when I can understand at the deepest level that that was a blessing, that was a blessing of this process of my own ability to understand consciousness integration and who I am, I can see the compassion and the love even in the darkest places. And I feel like that's what the true love of the mother represents. The mother of creation being that unconscious awareness, that part that just doesn't know what it doesn't know yet. But how compassionate and loving it is to hold space for what it doesn't know yet, knowing that it will and is in the process of being received and integrated. It's very intense on one level and so like heart melting on the other, to feel what that essence of mother is doing, is asked to do, not only in their own personal life, but we all have this part of ourselves that's being asked to do this in the world. We're being asked to hold space for ourselves and for our family and offer as much nurturing, compassionate care as we can, especially in the places that feel the most intense. And through the sidereal chart, yesterday I was talking about in the tropical chart, Jupiter is in Gemini, helping give all this amazing support through process of information. But in the sidereal chart, Jupiter is in Cancer, which is accessing, or maybe it's the other way around. I think Jupiter's in Cancer in the tropical chart. But when Jupiter is in Cancer, it's operating this coherence through the lens of that compassionate care. Coherence comes through nurturing and understanding and compassion, even when things are hard. And so I was getting that reflection that we are very much supported right now. We're very much supported in a very compassionate way. And we're just being stretched ourselves to include and incorporate that compassion for ourselves and the compassion for others, because we're all going through some version of the same thing, and it's intense for everyone. Okay, so here is the foundation of the reading. We have Queen of Wands and Eight of Coins. So what this foundation is talking about is how there is a process of bringing your creative spirit into this world, bringing your creative sense of self, your empowered creative sense of self. It's almost like when you think about it, you close your eyes, you think about, what is it that I would choose to do if there were no limitations? What would I feel most inspired on sharing with this world? Who would I be? And you get that vision and you feel that feeling. That is an energetic template for who you really are. And yet there's a vibrational difference between how you experience yourself now and that idealized version of what you wish to become. And anytime you can see that there's a difference between, oh, this is how my life is now, but this is how I see myself becoming, there's their need to make changes and choices to shift that frequency. And that's what we call working on something. You know, it's kind of like if you're building custom furniture, you go into the shop, you have the idea of custom furniture in your head, but you have to put every piece together in a physical way until that piece of custom furniture is totally completed. That's kind of what's happening with our creativity. We're using our creativity to imagine what's possible and who we're capable of becoming. But these instructions that we need from the mother and the father that come through our process of these patterns and triggers, that's what it's designed to do. They're giving us the instructions on how to make those changes in our lives and in our physical reality to shift into that most empowered, creative version of self. So that's kind of the foundation of what is under the surface of this. But again, at this current time, it's coming through this very keen lens of discrimination and discernment over which of those choices moves you closer to that creative ideal versus which of those choices is holding you back. Okay, so here we have the future energies. This is what will be embodied, or this is what we're working on moving forward. Okay, so this future energy feels challenging because the reflection of it feels like more, almost like more isolation, more the feeling of not being supported, the feeling of being isolated and not being supported. That's kind of what I'm getting the sense from this future energy. And again, going back through this lens of, if you feel that way, if you feel isolated and not supported in any way, that is in itself a trigger. That is a heightened sense of an emotional experience that can be received, that can be explored, that can be experienced, and can be vibrated. And so sometimes the best way to go through those hardest feelings is to have more isolation and have more time to actually be within yourself. So oftentimes when people talk about feeling isolated and being lonely, they don't see that the flip side of being alone and being separated from the energy of others is a great blessing when you can dive deeper into yourself. Only when you feel that you should be doing more, or you should have something that you don't, do you feel that guilt of not being enough or doing enough, or that lack of not having what it is that you think that you need. Whereas sometimes there are periods where we're kind of thrust into feelings of not being supported and feeling isolated and cut off that are great healing opportunities. So I'm going to put it like that, considering this lesson definitely seems to be about processing some places that feel challenging, but doing it in a way where you can relax into it and understand what's happening. You can be purposeful in that level of discomfort or that feeling of not being supported. The trick I find is to just, like, let's take not feeling like you have enough money. You know, a lot of people, myself included, kind of live paycheck to paycheck or day to day. You kind of get what you get and you keep it going. And there's a lot of that can come up in that process that makes you feel like, oh my God, I don't know if I have the money to pay the rent next month. So anytime that feeling comes up, you can just, instead of scrambling to try to figure out how to get more money or entertain all the ideas of what would happen if you couldn't pay the rent and having to move out, you just go into what it feels like to not be supported. You go into those actual feelings and really look as deeply as you can at what it feels like and validate that that feels that way. And when I've gone through this so many times in my own journey that even now when it comes up, I'm like, oh, that's that feeling that I'm not going to have what I need. But I can look back and see that I've always had what I needed. And I've processed so much emotion of not being supported that now when I feel it even a little bit, it doesn't really faze me because I have no evidence that I won't be supported. When I look back at all the times I got close to that point, I ended up having what I needed. And so this is where I think the true nature of finding the support we need is coming in. is seeing that it's actually already there. But we have to look really deep within ourselves to find that that support's already there. Or when it comes to isolation and feeling cut off, to look really deep and feel how we can't actually be separated from anything, that we're always connected to spirit, we're always connected to this world, we're always connected to creation as a whole. And that we can honor those feelings of not being supported and being isolated, but that when we look deep enough, we can experience that that's not actually the truth. Okay, so here we have the energy moving forward, or no, this is the influence energy, internal influences, Page of Cups, and the Ace of Wands. Okay, so the internal influences are definitely about following synchronicity, following the white rabbit. I really feel like, you know, when Alice goes into Wonderland and she's totally has no idea where to go or what to do, it's just like the rabbit shows up. She's like, oh, I recognize that. I'll follow that. And that led her on this kind of epic adventure through the unknown. But sometimes all it takes is just to follow whatever feels like an intuitive sign, whatever feels like some way of orienting you to move in a direction and just to keep going. And so I have a good friend, and they tattooed something on their arm that to represent to keep moving forward, to always keep moving forward, even though things are so uncertain and chaotic sometimes, to just focus on knowing there's a way to move forward and just set sights on that and just trust that moving forward everything will open up. And that's kind of what I'm getting, is that follow that internal feeling. Follow that internal feeling. I'm going to move forward even if things feel challenging. I'm going to find the synchronicity that's showing me the way that feels right to go. And look to the external world as the ways in which you can be creative in the process. Because again, going back to, if the truth of ourselves is that we're the light, we're the sun, we're the sun of creation, we're the light, then our very nature is designed to be creative. It's designed to be life-giving. And so that means anywhere we go, at any time in our lives, whether even if it seems like the mundane shopping trip to Target, what we don't understand and see is how much creativity and how much light we're exuding and how much we're affecting everything just by being ourselves going shopping. And so there are always ways to move through life and look for how you can express yourself, how you can share what you're inspired by, how you can connect to others that share your inspiration, how you can find ways to be creative about life. You find creative ways to pay the rent next month. Like, there are definitely creative inspirations that will pop up that are available as you move through. And know that, again, the nature of our reality is reflective. It's reflective because it's the part of us we don't see or understand. So that not only works in a negative way and a challenging way when it comes to what we're triggered by, but it works in an inspiring way and an exciting way too, when it connects to the part of us that's creating an opportunity to express. Okay. So we have the gateway. This is the archetype that's wanting to be embodied that leads to the outcome. So here we have the sun, and this is totally beautiful. This is totally synchronistic. We have Horus on this card, and Horus is the Egyptian deity that represents the rebirth of the sun through the integration process of the mother and the father. In Egyptian mythology, the Osiris and Isis myth is about the disconnection and the separation that they go through and the process of reunification. So this is very much these cosmic forces being told through this myth of this process of reunification of the mother and the father, and how that gives birth to the sun. And that the sun is the embodiment of the light and of the manifestation of the union of the mother and father. So what I'm going to say now is the only reason that we see so much darkness on this planet is because we've yet to give birth to our solar body yet. We're seeing so many people that this this communication and this communion between the mother and the father, they're still in separation. They're still not communicating with each other fully harmoniously. And because that's happening within ourselves, and it's been happening within ourselves for thousands of years, we see that reflected out. It's happening within everyone else. We're seeing so much separation of those energies that it seems bleak, because it seems like, how can this ever work? How can we ever make it through this? But the truth is that there's always been this process of learning to reconnect and learning to reunify those cosmic forces. It's just taken a very long time to lay a foundation for us to have the capacity of doing it consciously now. And that's why we can see, since the time of the 60s, there's been an explosion of consciousness awakening and awareness, because that's the signal that we are at the threshold of consciously understanding what that separation has been, and how we personally are in charge of communicating those two forces within ourselves back with each other, thus giving birth to ourselves as the sun to be reborn, as the embodiment of Horus. And Horus then became the hero that went forward and, conquered evil or whatnot in that myth. So this is really saying, and everything in this reading is pointing to, yes, things feel challenging. Work with the feelings that feel challenging. Understand the process that's happening with this communication between the mother and the father, and know how purposeful it is to go through our challenges and to work through those places in ourselves that have been shut down and isolated and not vibrating. Because when we feel this emergence, when we consciously recognize, oh, right, I've already been doing this my whole life. I've already been illuminating myself to bring myself forward into the world in a new way. This is the gateway showing, now we understand what this is all about. Now we understand that we're a process of creation that's always going through some version of this story. And we understand that that's our power. And when we understand the power of our own light through the process of our own consciousness integration, we don't worry about the reflections as much anymore. We just use the reflections. Something challenging comes up, some kind of thing that stimulates fear collectively or personally, and we can say, oh, look at that. There's another piece to integrate. Here's more light that's available. Here's the new set of instructions. We begin to shift our perspective from seeing a daunting world that feels like an insurmountable challenge to an exciting opportunity to expand and show ourselves what we're capable of. Okay, so here we have the outcome. We have the 9 of Wands. And what I'm feeling from this is that this is the feeling sense that kind of exhausted in the process. We're kind of tired in what we've had to do. I'm getting the sense that there's kind of this illumination process that's happening as we're working with the shadow is so constant. It's just happening within us constantly, and it's kind of requiring us to kind of keep up with ourselves and how much light that we're being asked to integrate. And not that there's anything wrong with this, because it's an accelerated time, which means that we have an accelerated capacity to process it. And there is that intelligence that's saying it wouldn't be telling you that this opportunity is ready unless it was actually ready. So we are going through this accelerated time of integrating the consciousness, and to recognize how much energy it takes to do that. And what I personally find when I go through periods of intense integration is I just give myself permission to rest as much as possible. Not only during the time of integration, but after the time of integration. I've even communicated to certain creative projects and certain relationships in my life, like, hey, I'm just going to take a couple months off. I have no problem in taking as much time to make sure I can recover the amount of energy that I've put into the process of alchemizing what's been challenging. I don't just keep pushing for the next thing and for the next thing. It does come in waves. So I think what this reading is really showing is how powerful this is And trust yourself, trust your speed of what you can handle. But to know when the challenges come up, how to integrate that energy and understand how powerful it is what you're doing, and then rest and incorporate that and allow that process to take time to balance itself out. That you have permission. You can give yourself permission. The inner authority is you claiming, I need more time. I need to slow this down. I need to spend some time integrating what I've been processing. It doesn't stop the process itself, but you can control the speed and how fast you feel it needs to go. And especially if you have families and relationships that are kind of requiring you to show up, and that's totally understandable, but just know you are in charge. Your only limitations are the ones that you put on this process. And if you feel that you can't create more time, then you can't. But I'm here to tell you that you can. You just have to find a way to give yourself permission and the authority to choose that, and ask for the support if you need from those around you. Okay, so the next layer of the reading we have is the Empress. Love seeing her here. Oh my God, this, okay, so the Knight of Discs and the Four of Cups. Okay, so what I love about this energy, this is so great. Here we have the Moon in Cancer, very nurturing, very supportive. Everything I was talking about, that supportive process of understanding the mother's role and what the mother is going through. The Empress, which is Venus energy, really understanding self-worth and how everything comes from that place of magnetism. The Empress is magnetism. She doesn't have to strive for anything because that's just the way everything comes to her naturally. And the Knight of Discs, which is healing. It's bringing spirit into the material plane and allowing for the harvest to reveal itself. So this layer of the reading is definitely recognizing what the mother is going through, what the mother in you has been doing, and understand how successful you've been in healing and how supported you are in the process to relax and just be in that place as much as possible of feeling how radiant, feeling how beautiful, feeling how powerful, feeling the truth of who you are, who your what your true nature is, and how all this healing work is leading to more of that, we'll call it passive creation. Not that there always won't be elements of active creation. Here we have this bringing the creative spirit in by putting the pieces together in the physical world and following our inspiration, but knowing deep down that this process is being held by the mother of creation itself, that wants you to feel this time and the space and the support and the level of expression that's available, to just express yourself and who you are, and let that be enough. To know that you are enough. You don't need to do more. You don't need to be more. Just by going through this process is the understanding of yourself, and that's enough. And there's a point when the belief systems begin to line up with that. It's one thing to say you're enough just the way you are. I am who I am, and that is enough, which is a great affirmation, by the way. It's another thing when our belief systems really start to come into alignment with that, and we feel what that actually means in every fiber of our being. Okay, so the next layer of the reading, return to the mother tree. And lineage. Lineage came up last time. So yeah, that's a hit to, again, this is part of a continuum. This is part of a story. The same story that the mother and the father of creation have been going through from the beginning is the same story of awakening that we go through in our own lives. And there's so much knowledge and wisdom built into this journey because this story has been repeated and experienced in so many different ways over and over and over again that it's almost as if every being that's ever gone through any kind of challenges like you're going through right now is with you, going through these challenges right now. You're drawing on the wisdom and the knowledge that's been experienced in all of creation about how to move through these challenges and how to alchemize this unconscious patterning into light. That you don't have to ask for more support. You don't have to ask for more support, but you can feel how much support you already have. Because everything in creation is very focused and fully conspiring to bring forward the presence of the restored consciousness that's been shut down and vibrating so low. It's very much here. And this return to the mother tree is this, to see that this is how family works. Just like we all go through challenges with our own family, we hold space for those challenges, but we stay knit together at a deep level. Like this is the power of the mother holding all of her children, letting everybody know it's going to be okay, that we're a family, that we're in this together. And even though it seems bleak sometimes and it seems like we're all separated, even that is an illusion, that there is light here, that we are all together. And when we consciously open to experience that within ourselves, we can feel the connection to all of creation that is on that wavelength. And that's really what the part of ourself that we've needed more than anything, is to just feel deeply loved and acknowledged and seen for what we've been going through here. And to be recognized that it's so challenging on so many levels. And that, yes, we signed up for these challenges, and yes, this is a very exciting experience to have with Polarity. But the part of us that's integrated so much intense experience feels really held when we recognize that this is a part of what it means to hold space for creation itself, to hold space for the birthing of the sun, for the birthing of light, for the birthing of new life. Okay. So here we have the last card. This is from the Tao Oracle. And this is the sixth hexagram called Conflict, Will to Power, Hostility, Jealousy, Stubbornness, Aggression, Fear, Competitiveness, and Controversy. Okay. I'm going to show that card because I really like that card. It's showing these two kind of sentinel figures that are butting heads. So what I'm going to read, I'm not going to read from the book about this. I'm just going to share because a lot of what I've been through, my recent initiation, very much was about conflict. It was about conflict that I was having with certain relationships, and it was highlighting a conflict that I was having within myself. It was a conflict that I was finding that I didn't feel fully empowered in expressing myself for who I was and what I wanted. And because I wasn't feeling fully empowered to express myself for who I was and what I wanted, I felt like I was being shut down. I felt like someone else had more power than me, and I felt like they were using their power to keep me small. And it really raged in me. Like, I felt so much rage come up in me when I just wanted to make them wrong and prove them wrong and point it out and tell everybody else, like, don't you see how wrong this is? Don't you see what they're doing? Like, every part of me was raging on wanting vengeance and wanting justice in that kind of way. And I resisted doing that. I let all those emotions move in myself, and I took the time and space to feel that, and layers of it. And I just kept letting myself feel that I wanted to continue the conflict and win, but not actually creating the conflict in my life. And that really yielded an amazing result, because and it took about 2 weeks. It's been happening kind of around the time of the solar eclipse, and it's just resolving itself now. But my experience of understanding that the conflict that I was seeing in the world and all my projections were stimulating a feeling inside of me that I had a really hard time understanding what to do with. And it was okay that it took 2 weeks for it to integrate it. It's okay that it took different layers. that I had to go through. Because when I just stayed the course and I just kept letting those triggers come up when they came up, and I, like I said, that affirmation, I would just consciously create space of loving acceptance to receive how it felt and what it wanted to do. It eventually started to communicate to me how I can express myself in ways that I couldn't express myself before. But I didn't know I wasn't expressing myself before, and I didn't know I would have wanted to express myself that way before. It's almost like I didn't even know I could express myself that way, okay? And that is what the conflict taught me, is that the way that oppositional force made me feel so shut down, underneath that shut down feeling was actually, no, I actually can go about this a completely different way. But it took the conflict in order for me to find that level of empowerment within myself. And that's what I'm going to say at this point is kind of what this reading is all about, is building a strong foundation for loving acceptance and being able to hold these triggers and these emotions when they come up, and to give them the space and the movement in order to reveal the self-empowerment that actually lives within. And to treat everything that happens in the external world, because I get the sense with this reading this future energy that there is conflict coming. There is collective, individual conflict on any and every level, potentially anything that can pop up in our world that makes us feel something is opposing us, something's shutting us down, something's keeping us from moving forward, something's making us feel small. Just know that that is, in its own way, the process of creation trying to reveal a deeper sense of self-empowerment from within. And it may not be pleasant, and it may not make sense right off the bat, but it does bring forward your own will in a stronger and clearer way. And not just your will to do anything, it's your will to align with the will of creation. It's the will of creation moving through your own will. That's what's underneath the surface of all this conflict. It's the power to move your will in alignment with creation and allow that will to ripple effect and change this world in powerful ways. But just like it took a couple weeks from the time I felt the conflict until the time I felt the will move to be able to express myself differently, it can take as much time as it needs to take, and everybody's going through their own version of it in their own way. And that's okay. Leaving enough space and allowance for this to happen, and just focus on what your role is, what's your particular pattern, or what's your particular level of self-empowerment that's becoming available. Is all of these challenges when it comes to the external world and it comes to our shadow is new levels of self-empowerment that's waiting for us to integrate it. So I'm going to leave it there. Again, if you like my content, please like and subscribe, share the video. If you'd like a personal reading with me, you'll find my email in the description box. And if you want to go deeper in these energies, I recommend you check out my Saturn Neptune series. I made a 3-part video series where I really dive deep into what the Saturn and Neptune connection, the conjunction, is opening up and changing within the collective consciousness, and what's available for us to understand about ourselves and how to relate with that. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time.